All right, so open up Flash if you do not already have it open. Hopefully you do. So I said to open it. We are going to learn ActionScript today. You've got layer 1 should be showing. Go ahead and rename that to, you can write ActionScript, or I like to write AS because it's a lot shorter than ActionScript. And go ahead and lock that layer. I try to not put anything on my ActionScript layer. That's where we're going to write all of our code. And I just don't like having any graphics or anything on it. I like to keep it clean. And if you're not familiar with ActionScript, ActionScript is the programming language used inside of Flash. There's 3 different versions. There's ActionScript 1, 2, and 3. We're using 3. Most everybody uses 3 now. If you get a job programming in Flash, first of all, I apologize. Second of all, you might have some old files that have ActionScript 2 in it, but you can always go back and look at documentation for it. Because more than likely, if you get a job with that, you understand programming enough that you can pick it up. Go ahead and add a new layer, and I'm going to drag it underneath the ActionScript layer. And we're just going to set up a few different color backgrounds so that we can see that we're navigating within Flash. So I'll name this backgrounds. Or again, if you're lazy, just BG, background. So with the new layer set up, grab your rectangle tool, which is R on your keyboard, and just draw out a shape on your scene. Doesn't have to be anything special. Then click on frame 10 and hit F6. This again is on the background layer. And I'm going to select that shape I just drew and just change the color on it. And we'll go ahead and stick with this right now. Just 2 different colors, very simple. What we're going to be doing is using the ActionScript to first of all stop it at frame 1, because if I were to test this right now hitting Control Enter, it'll play through the movie over and over again just like it always repeats. So I'm going to stop it on frame 1, and then we're going to set up a button that when you click it, it'll go straight to frame 10. So very basic functionality, but it's basically all of the functionality you're going to need to know through the end of the semester. How to stop it in a certain place, and then how to make it go whenever you click a button. Kind of, yeah. Yeah, no, you can do. Yeah, you can do that full functionality with everything we're doing, except Flash isn't used for producing DVDs or anything, but it's good. No, it's kind of the same functionality though. I think it's, what is it, Encore? Is Adobe's DVD producing? Yeah, and I mean it's very similar, kind of with the way that it functions. But if you see, do you remember the what's it called? What's that electric car that everybody drives? Prius. The Prius website that I pulled up at the beginning of the semester, that goes back and forth, and you see the car driving out and everything. I can put a link to it, but yeah, it's kind of the same functionality as what we're doing right now, except a little more advanced, but depends on who it is. A long time. Yes, well, let's just go on here. So I'm going to click on my ActionScript layer. You can go ahead and lock your background layer too. We're just going to leave it at that, nice and simple. So the first thing we want to do is stop it on frame 1. Now to write ActionScript, you have to click on the frame that you want to write the ActionScript on. So I'm clicking on frame 1 of my ActionScript layer, and hit F9 on your keyboard. It'll pull up your actions panel. Now if you're on a Mac, it's like whatever, function, command, F9, spin around in a circle. Yeah. So we'll pull up our actions window here, And on the left-hand side, you'll see this drop-down. Let's just familiarize ourselves with this a little bit. You have a drop-down menu. This is basically your ActionScript library. If you do get advanced with ActionScript, there is reasons to do it still, even to this day. But if you do get advanced with that, you can go to your library here to find certain functions or figure out what you want to do. But there's really no purpose of it in this class. So if you want to get rid of it, you can hit this little arrow right here and it'll collapse it. And then you have this sidebar right here. It'll tell you once you start writing multiple frames of ActionScript, you'll be able to jump back and forth between all of the ActionScript that you have written by clicking on this sidebar instead of coming back to your timeline. Which is nice because it allows you, like typically when I'm writing ActionScript, I'll have my ActionScript full screen so that I can just hit F9 to turn it off and on, but if I needed to hop back and forth between frames, I can do that as well. Yeah, if you're making a game, you're going to have multiple, you'll have hundreds, possibly thousands of lines of ActionScript that you'll be able to hop back and forth between with this. Which I've made a game before. It's pretty fun, actually. There's a lot of tutorials for that online. No, I don't have any tutorials for that on my website, but if you just do a Google search for create a game in Flash, a ton of stuff comes up. You can do you can really do anything. They're making 3D games now in Flash, but there's a lot of tutorials on doing like the tank war games and things like that, some simpler ones that'll kind of get your feet wet. So if you have any desire to do that, it's pretty simple to get started with it. But the first thing I'll teach you inside of action scripting and coding is how to comment out your code. You can write comments in your code to help you remember what you were doing. So a few years down the line, if you're looking back at code and you're like, I had no idea what I was doing right here, you can always comment it out. To do a single line comment, you do 2 forward slashes. And here, let me increase my font size. Preferences, text. No, ActionScript. What was that? There you go. So 2 forward slashes allows a single line comment. If for some reason you want to write multiple lines of comments, you can do a forward slash with an asterisk and then close it with an asterisk and a forward slash. Multi-line comment. So sometimes you need a little more explanation than just one simple line. That's where that would help. And again, it really helps you if you're working on a team with multiple people, or if you again are pulling up a project from a couple years back and you forget what you did. It helps to have comments in there every once in a while. And then what we're going to do, and you'll know that it's a comment because it's grayed out when you write ActionScript. You'll see that it highlights either blue or green or red. There's different colors. But to make our movie stop at frame 1 and not continue to play through and hit that 10th frame, you simply write the word stop. You'll open and close a parentheses and put a semicolon at the end. Kind of. It's closer to JavaScript, yeah. We could have a long discussion about that later, but it's not the same as HTML. It is code, though. They are words. They have that similarity. Yeah, it's kind of like saying basketball is like the same as football because they both have balls. But exactly, there's a lot of differences. So if you test this out, hitting Control-Enter on your keyboard, it should stay right there. It shouldn't go anywhere. Yes. Yeah. ActionScript is a ton of built-in functions. It references libraries and everything. You can create your own functions within it, but there's a lot of pre-built functions. Kind of, that's really what JavaScript and HTML is as well. It's just somebody came together and decided this is how it should work. Built a whole library around it, and voila. So if it is blinking, so say I have an error in my action script, you'll see it blinking like this. That basically means that you have an error, and if I close that down, I can see a window called compiler errors that popped up. It says scene 1, layer, action script, frame 1. So that's telling me on my action script layer on frame 1, on line 8, there's a syntax error expected, yada, yada, yada. So it kind of gives you an idea of where it's at. If you double click on this, it'll take you directly to that line. And most of the time, sorry, don't look at this if you get seizures. Most of the time, it'll take you directly to the line and it'll be helpful. Sometimes it'll take you to a line and it's actually the line before it that's messing up, but we'll get to that as we get more complicated with this. So does everybody have their stopping on frame 1? Awesome. There are different on-click functions, and we will get there. I promise. Baby steps, man. Come on. That's good. So let's go ahead, and if you go back to the ActionScript layer on frame 1, click on frame 1 and then click and drag it over to 10. What that'll do is create a new keyframe at 10, and it moves our ActionScript to that frame. So if you do that and test your code, what's going to happen is Flash will start playing, it'll start at frame 1, and there's no ActionScript on frame 1 right now because we moved it to 10. So it's going to play out until it hits that ActionScript, and when it sees the ActionScript, it'll run whatever we wrote in there, which in this case is stop. So it'll play through and it'll stop at frame 10. So if you have a movie and you're looking to stop it at the very end of it, you can just put that stop ActionScript on the very last frame on a keyframe, and it'll play through and it'll stop at the end. We can go ahead and move that back over to frame 1. Again, you just click and drag to move it. I just lost my thing. Y'all seem excited about this. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to hit F9 on your keyboard. And let's change this stop one to say we want it to, like when you're working on your animations, you'll have sometimes where you want the animation, like you're going to be watching, say, 10 scenes of animations, and you want to go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. You can use a function that's called go to and play. Yeah. It does what it sounds like, doesn't it? Yeah, well, go to and play works similar to that. You can put in the frame number, and then you can put in a scene name. So if it's called scene 1 or scene 2, you can tell it to go to and play. This will play at frame 10 on scene 2. Now if you leave this scene 2 part off and you just say go to and play 10, it'll go to and play at frame 10. And since frame 10 currently doesn't have anything on it, it'll just loop around and start back at frame 1 because we don't have any stop action script or anything. Now if we wanted it to go to and stop at frame 10, let's say go to and stop. So if I were to play this right now, it'll just go straight to frame 10 and stop. Does that make sense? Sweet. See, code's simple. It's nice, right? Well, yeah. Well, welcome to Flash. All right. And so the next thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and go back to our timeline. I'm going to add a new layer above my background layer. I'm going to call this layer button. And guess what we're going to put on it? A seal. So go ahead and draw a seal. No. Just grab your rectangle tool or whatever if you want to get fancy with it. come through here and put a rectangle. It can be an oval, it can be a seal. Hey, perspective, man, come on. I know. Beautiful. Let's make it cuter. Isn't that cute?
It looked great beforehand. Now it's freaking me out.
Alright. I need a ball on its nose. I'll do that later. Anyways, so you can draw whatever you want. That's the great thing about buttons and Flash. So I've got a seal that I would like to create a button out of. If you have an oval, it's okay. You don't have to draw a seal. If you draw a seal, you get 1,000,000 points, but you know. So I'm going to highlight my seal here and hit F8 on my keyboard to bring up my convert to symbol dialog box. And even though I made a seal, I'm going to call it button, just so I know what it is. Which doesn't make any sense right now. And change the type drop down from movie clip to button. What? You got this? Okay. So right now, if I look at my library over here, I have a button, which happens to be a seal. Go figure. Does everybody have their button created? Moving on then. Okay. Go ahead and double click on your button. And you have the over, down, and hit. You should see inside of your button here when you double click on it. These are your three different states for the button, and the hit is the area where it's actually going to show. This will make more sense in a second. Go ahead and what I typically do when I make a button for the up, over, and down state is just click on the first frame, which is the up state, and hit F6, F6, F6. That'll create the 4 different keyframes so that I have the keyframe on every single state. And then what I can do is, if you think about this in terms of the end user's experience, the up state is going to be what it looks like normally. Over state is going to be when their mouse is hovered over it, and down state is going to be when they click it. And this hit area defines the area that the user is going to be able to click it. So if I were to delete my seal's tail, then when I use the button, whenever I test it, the user is only going to be able to mouse over this area even though the entire seal is visible. So that would be kind of frustrating for your user. So yeah, you might want the whole seal to be there, or button. So go ahead and with the up, over, and down state, make them slightly different. I'm going to have my up state stay like this. What was that? Up, over, and down state? Did you create a button? Yeah, convert the symbol and convert it to a button. And then you double click on that button and it'll open up. It's kind of like the movie clip where it opens up in a new timeline. And then go ahead and just, for each of these, make them slightly different. What was that? The up, over, and down and hit? Yeah, if you... whenever you go to convert it to a symbol, F8, make sure your drop down is selected as button. Yeah. Alright. So I've got my up, over, down, and hit state. And see, the ball's over him and then it's down. Anyways. Once you're done with that, you can actually go ahead and test it, hitting Control-Enter on your keyboard. And even though the background's going to be flickering because we don't have the stop ActionScript put in there, you can still test what it all looks like. Alright, so go back to scene 1. We've got our button working. What we're going to do is write ActionScript to bring, whenever you click the button, we're going to write ActionScript to send it to frame 10. So the first thing we need to do, though, is we have our button on the stage. Over here in your properties, when you click on the button, you see this area that says instance name. ActionScript is an object-oriented programming language, which means that as you're writing the code, you're writing it to specific elements on the stage. Kind of like if you're familiar with jQuery at all. Using jQuery, you have to reference the div or the class or the ID. Well, I know I say jQuery because it's more general. I don't know. jQuery is JavaScript, and anyways. So under the properties here, go ahead and put your instance name as button. Be sure that it's B-U-T-T-O-N, all lowercase. As you go through and start to write ActionScript, your number one killer is going to be misspelling things and capitalizations and whatnot. So I'm just keeping mine all lowercase. Again, that's clicking on my button, aka seal, and going to properties and saying button. Under the properties, it says instance name. Once you're done with that, make sure that your ActionScript layer, I'm going to lock my button layer real quick. Make sure that the ActionScript layer has the ActionScript back at frame 1. We moved it to frame 10. If it's still at frame 10, click and drag that to frame 1. And hit F9 on your keyboard to bring up your Actions panel. And so the first thing we're going to do, if you'll notice, I cleared out the ActionScript that I had before. I'm going to type in that word stop so that it stops on frame 1. And then the next thing we're going to do is set up an event click to go through, and whenever we click on our button, we're going to send the playback head to frame 10. Let me enter down a couple of lines here. And the first thing we need to do is reference the object that we're assigning this event clip to. The object's name is button. I'm going to collapse everything so I have more room here. And we're going to put a period. Type in add event listener. All of this is one word. There's caps whenever there's a new word. And I'm going to type this out and then go back and explain it after it's written. Camel case, exactly. Open parentheses. This is going to be a mouse event. Going to happen on click. Alright, so I'll let y'all type this out. Alright, so what this is, if you think of it as kind of a badly structured sentence, I guess, what we're doing is we have our button on our stage, which we gave the name of button. We're telling Flash that we want to add an event listener to that button. So we're tying this event listener to the button. And the event listener basically says, you know, okay, wait for this event to happen. It does exactly what it sounds like. It listens for an event. So as somebody's going through and they're browsing your website, your project that you've made, Flash is continually waiting for the user to do a certain event. Inside of the parentheses is where we put what event we're looking for. We're using a mouse event inside of here, and we're waiting for the user to click it. So with the mouse event, there's multiple mouse events you can use. You can use mouse over. If you wanted to do something when the user mouse is over something, and there's multiple events that you can use. Yes, yes. And I say they have to be all caps. Some of them are partly cap, partly lower. Honestly, their function naming conventions are horrible inside of ActionScript, and it just takes some time to figure it out and get used to it. But everything is very well documented with Flash, though. You know, you can basically figure out anything you want to do by doing a quick Google search. But yeah, and it is. I mean, there's a lot of things with ActionScript 3 that is a lot easier, but you know, it's still. I'm not a big fan of ActionScript, to be honest with you. But I've written hundreds and hundreds of lines of code, building applications and stuff. You remember the whole page flip thing that was really popular for a while, like reading an online magazine, you can flip the pages. Yeah, I worked for a company that did reproductions of magazines, and they hired me on specifically to build a page flip application for them. And it's a lot of code, but I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. It was fun building your own thing. Yeah, yeah. But building the function to handle it all, and then they wanted video embeds and all this kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun. But back on this though. So we've got the event listener added to the button. We're waiting for a mouse event, and the specific one we're waiting for is the mouse to click. Then we have the comma here, and we put in the function name that we want to run whenever that is clicked. So this could be whatever you want it to be named, just as long as it's not syntax. Like you can't name a function stop, because it highlights blue and it'll just throw Flash into a tailspin. That's why I named it go function. You can name it, you know, go inspector gadget. You can name it whatever you want. Typically, I'll keep it something that's similar to what I'm trying to do. Like if I'm sending it to the about section of a website, I'll call it go about. But we're just creating a function here, so we'll stick with go function. So then the next thing we need to do is set up an actual function. So we enter down a couple of lines here, and to tell Flash that we're declaring a function, we start out with a word function and a space, just like JavaScript. We put in our function name. Called go function. Yours should be purple as well. When you type in the word function, don't capitalize it. Check the spelling on it. Throw a space after it before you put in the function name. Flash is finicky like that. Alright, so whenever you create a function, you want to put in what type of function it's going to be. I'm using the letter E here to, I'll explain this in a second. But you want to put in that it's going to be a mouse event. Then add a colon and type in the word void. And again, I'm going to type this out and I'll explain it in a second here. Open your curly bracket and then hit enter, and it should automatically put a closing curly bracket and put your cursor in the middle. going to give y'all a second to get that added in. Alright, so going through and explaining this, again, the word function declares that it's a function. Then you put in the function name, which needs to match whatever the function name is that you said that you're adding to your button. And the E is referencing the object. So there's, once you get, again, more advanced into ActionScript, you can use this E inside of your function to reference the object, but we're not doing that right now. It just has to be in there. And then you have that .mouse event, which actually I think that might need to be a semicolon. We'll find out in a second when it throws an error. But mouse event just references, what type of event you're using for this function. You close your parentheses, and this colon in the word void is something that y'all don't need to worry about right now. Just know that it has to be on the function in order for it to work properly. It didn't used to be that way, but with ActionScript 3 they added that in there, and it doesn't really matter that much. It just has to be in there for it to work. I'm trying to teach y'all as little as possible right now so that you get it with the stuff. Not saying that y'all wouldn't get it, but yeah, trying not to blow your minds up. So inside of this function, this is where we'll write what we want to happen. So we've got it set up, okay, when you click on this function runs. Now what's going to happen inside of this function? So we can use what we just tried out with the go to and stop, and just write in go to and stop. I'm going to put in frame number 10 and add a semicolon at the end of that. And what this would mean is that whenever Flash, whenever it hears, I guess, since it's listening, that the user has clicked on the button, it's going to run the function go function. And inside of that function, you have go to and stop 10, so it'll send the playback head to 10, and it'll stop. Now when I test this, it throws an error. This is something that, again, what? I actually did expect this. I expect it every semester. I always put in a period after this E instead of a semicolon. But again, it just brings me back to the compiler errors here. If you look at what it says, and this is one of the things that's very descriptive. Frame 1 on line 12, so we'll go to line 12 here. It says there's a syntax error. It's expecting a right parenthesis before the dot. So you have this, here's the only dot on that line. It says it's expecting a right parenthesis because it's not exactly sure what to call this, but in reality it needs a colon there. Not a semicolon. Yeah, I get those confused all the time, I'm sorry. And now if you test it, it should work. And then if I hover over my seal here and click it, it'll go to frame 10. Yes, yeah, with that, so your ActionScript is all written in frame 10, like that. Just click that so that it's highlighted. Yeah, back on scene 1, on the ActionScript layer, click on frame 10 so it's highlighted, and then click and drag that to frame 1. And that'll give it to where, there you go. And right now we just have it going to frame 10. Now if we wanted to, we could put another button in there and send it back to frame 1. We're not going to do that today. This is just an intro to kind of getting that basic functionality to work. But that's it with ActionScript for right now. We'll get into some more advanced stuff later on.